We'll call the city council meeting of February 3rd to order. Roll call.
Mayor Reese.
Here.
Councilmember Osk.
Here.
Nelson. Here. Gilbertson.
Here.
Gardner.
Here.
Fagerly.
Here.
Davis. Here. And Schultes.
Here.
Councilmember Butterfield is excused. So 8 present, 1 absent.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to start out with something that I don't have on the agenda. Many years ago, when I was first on the council, I served with a gentleman named Richard Halterman, Dick Halterman. Dick died on January 3rd. He was 94 years old. And he was on the council for 22 years. Dick was quite a leader. And we worked together, Dick and myself and Kevin Halliday, in developing and bringing to work business the RAC 8. And I just wanted to recognize Dick. A couple of years ago, I took him on the mayor's bike ride. Now, look at, he's 94 years old. But we had a bike that's owned by the city. It's out at the community center. It's got 2 wheels in front with a bench seat that Dick would sit under, and I would pedal him around. And he just thoroughly enjoyed that. So I just wanted to take the time to recognize Dick since he passed away on January 3rd. So that's about it. We'll go to addition or deletions to the agenda. You all have the agenda. I would like to have us add to the agenda at 10B, council member Mike has gone, and he was on the broadband committee, and I don't think I can make a motion, but if one of you would make a motion to assign that committee to Justin Osk serving on that, I would appreciate it. I've talked to Justin, he's open to doing that.
Mr. Mayor, for clarification, are you looking to add that as 10C, or are you looking to do that now?
10C.
Okay. I'd move an amended agenda with including 10C.
All right.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Roll call.
One second. Councilmember Osk.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Gilbertson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Davis. Aye. And Schultes.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
That motion passes. Now I'll call on Renee Larson, our city clerk, to review the consent items.
Mr. Mayor and council members, for your consideration and approval this evening, I have the city council minutes of January 21st, 25, the Willmar Municipal Utility Commission minutes of January 27th, 25, the advertisement for bids for project number 2505-B, Trunk Highway 40 drain pipe repair, advertisement for bids for project number 2503-B, Street Improvement Project West, Parks and Recreation Board applications, and the accounts payable report from 1/17/25 to 1/29/25.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Gilbertson,
Aye.
Gardner,
Aye.
Fagerly,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Schultes,
Aye.
and Oss.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
That passes. There are no items removed from the consent agenda, so we'll go to number 8, the open forum. And do we have anybody? No? Okay. Next is a public hearing for cannabis regulation ordinance. I'll call on our operations director, Kyle Box.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight is the public hearing for two cannabis-related ordinances. One is the ordinance regulating cannabis and hemp retail businesses within the City of Willmar, and to follow will be the zoning ordinance to accompany that. As was discussed at the last two council meetings ago, the first meeting in January, we walked through the ordinance, and I'd like to do that again, just for the sake of the public hearing. So just wanted to highlight some sections in the ordinance here, starting with section 8-372. This is the limitation of registrations. Within the ordinance, the city is going to allow, or is proposed to allow, two active cannabis retailers within the city limits. This is prescribed by state statute for one cannabis retailer per every 12,500 residents, making Willmar's minimum number 2. The city council can increase that at any time, but at this time, we're recommending 2. In addition to that, the city does reserve the right to start a municipal cannabis business if it so chooses. For information, if the city was to decide to go down that route, it does not count towards that minimum number. So if there were 2 active licenses within the city wanted to open up a municipal dispensary, the city would have 3. Moving on to section 8.374, the city added in this ordinance the preliminary inspection prior to retail registration. So this would be once we receive notice from the state of Minnesota, the Office of Cannabis Management, we would start a preliminary inspection to help applicants walk through the application process to make sure that we are addressing everything that we need to address through the application process. Moving on to section 8-379 as the annual compliance checks. This is to mirror the compliance checks that we have with liquor and with the low potency ordinance that we have with the city, on record with the city as well. So again, it just walks through the compliance checks, the unannounced age verification compliance checks, and then explains the process for failure of those compliance checks. Moving on to section 8-388 is the minimum buffer requirements. State law allows cities to impose maximum buffer zones. The city is proposing to prohibit the operation of a cannabis retail business within 1,000 feet of a school, 500 feet of a daycare, 500 feet of a residential treatment facility, and 500 feet within a public attraction, like a public park or an event center or any area that's frequently used by minors. The zoning districts, section 8-389. The retail, specifically the retail cannabis businesses would be allowed in the following districts: General Business District 1, 2, and 3, and the Central Business District. And we'll talk about that more in the zoning ordinance. Section 8-395, again, describing the city's authority to establish itself as a cannabis retailer. Moving on to section 8-412 is the registration fees and renewal fees. I wanted to highlight this fee particularly because the city already currently licenses low-potency retailers at this time. Those retail fees have been paid for 2025 to the city of Willmar. In the event the state does issue licenses in 2025, the city would waive those fees for existing license holders within the city. Moving on to section 8-434 is the for under temporary licenses or temporary events. We have prohibited locations. Temporary events would not be allowed on public property or any property located within a residential district. When this ordinance was introduced, Councilmember Osk had asked us to look at the buffer zones to that temporary location as well, and we did include that for clarification in the ordinance. So those similar buffer zones that apply to retail businesses would also apply to those for temporary events. So 1,000 feet from a school, 500 feet from a daycare, treatment facility, parks, playgrounds, etc. And then lastly, the on-site consumption for temporary events, those would be, even temporary events are allowed. However, the on-site consumption at those events would be prohibited. Mr. Mayor, that is the end of, that's what I have for the council at this point. I know we do have some public comment that we are going to be reading in. But I'll stand for any questions after that.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve the cannabis regulation ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, you need to open the public hearing.
I was wondering about that. I looked back, I didn't see it. All right, we'll open the meeting for public comment. Anybody wishing to speak in regards to cannabis regulation ordinance?
I do have something to read into the record.
Okay,
It was sent to me this afternoon after a phone conversation I had with attorney Susan Burns, who is the attorney for Hemponics. She, later in the day, sent me a letter to read in because she is unable to be here today, so I'll just read as she's written. Dear Mrs. Larson, I am sorry I am unable to attend this evening's council meeting and appreciate the opportunity to submit comments. As discussed, I am writing on behalf of my client, Hemponics. In follow-up to our conversation, I am writing to request that the City Council discuss or clarify a few questions and consider 2 requested amendments on the proposed ordinance regulating cannabis and hemp retail businesses in the city of Willmar. Those questions and comments are as follows. Number 1, Section 8-372. Does this section envision the issuance of 2 licenses exclusive to medical cannabis retailers and medical cannabis combination businesses? Number 2, Section 8-376A7. Should with be within? If not, please clarify this section. Number 3, Section 8-376C. Delinquent obligations to city or state. Is there a mechanism in place to notify the business owner who is leasing business premises if their landlord is delinquent on taxes? Is the waiver provision intended to include a situation in which delinquency is not due to actions on the part of the license holder? Or how would this situation be handled given that the business is not permitted to relocate? Same comment applies to Section 8-414B, regulating hemp. Number 4, Section 8-378J. Please explain the intent on this provision and consider making the language more specific. If prohibits the sale of hemp and cannabis products by any other means to any other person, it is vague and a bit overbroad. If business owners are required to follow the law, this seems redundant and confusing. Same comment applies to hemp provision 8-417I. Also, the language "or in any other manner or form prohibited by federal, state, or other local law" would prohibit the sale of cannabis, aka marijuana, because it is illegal at the federal level under the Controlled Substance Act. Number 5, Section 8.8-379D, other compliance checks. Similar comments on illegality of cannabis, marijuana applies with respect to the reference to compliance checks authorized by federal laws for the enforcement of a particular federal law. Number 6, Section 8-395B. If I am reading the ordinance correctly, I believe the reference should be to Section 8-372. Perhaps I misinterpreted. Number 7, Section 8-415, responsibility of lower potency hemp edible retailers. I ask the council to consider revising the imposition of strict liability on hemp business owners for acts of their employees. The business owner should be responsible for training employees on proper business operations that are in compliance with the city ordinance. However, if an employee decides to violate the law even after they have been properly trained, it seems unfair to make the business owner automatically responsible for that act. If the business owner doesn't train employees or knows that an employee is violating the law and looks the other way or knowingly retains a non-compliant employee on staff, then they should be held responsible, of course. It seems like there is room for amending the language to include the concept of business owner knew or should have known. I hope you agree. These same comments apply to Section 8-384 on cannabis. I appreciate your consideration on these comments. I'm available to discuss and look forward to listening to the council meeting recording. Signed, Susan Burns, Attorney at Law.
Okay. Is there anybody else that wants to speak? So,
Tom, you mentioned that? So earlier this afternoon, Councilmember Tom Butterfield sent me an email in regards to this. And let me find it. Wrong time. The other one. It was a question from, concern from Jason Hampstead. He called Mr. Butterfield on Saturday. And the question was, is the city going to open marijuana shop? If so, will that count as one shop? He was informed no. And also he asked about no mailing of products. Those were the two items that he would like addressed.
Robert, are you gonna counsel us a little bit on this?
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, I believe Operations Director Box will have responses to the attorney's lengthy email with questions section by section. I think in general, there were a couple points that were well taken and will result in very, very minor edits to the language in the ordinance before you. But in general, the way the ordinance is drafted is similar to the way the city licenses other products like liquor, like tobacco. In specific regards to the suggestion that the ordinance is too harsh on business owners if their employees commit a violation of the ordinance. Again, that is no different than city licensing regulations in other contexts. My comment would be, certainly the council will have discretion when it's considering what punitive measures to take if there is a violation, to take the full context of the violation into effect and to recognize if there were efforts made by the business owner to comply or if other circumstances were present that would justify some harsher treatment in response to a violation. So I think that's built into the licensing structure of any licensing ordinance. This one is no different. We can perhaps go section by section with Operations Director Box, though, and I'll be happy to answer any follow-up questions.
Should I close the public hearing and bring it up to the council as he speaks?
And honestly, Mayor, I think keeping the hearing open for the response to the comments read into the record would be appropriate. And then calling for comments or anyone who wishes to address the council one more time after that would make sense, and then bringing it to the council.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Box.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, we do have some responses here. In generally, city is agreeable to most of these changes. So moving back to section 8-372, the limitation of registrations. That's where we talk about the city issuing a maximum number of 2 retail businesses. However, we did add, there is an exclusion for medical cannabis combination businesses that would not count towards that maximum number. And that is described in state statute as well. So any medical dispensaries or medical combination businesses would not go towards that maximum number. So that is written into the ordinance section there. Moving to section 8-376, A-7, we did correct the term there. It's within instead of with. Moving to section 8-395, the city as a cannabis retailer, and the response or the written question was a misreference for a cross section, so we did update that to section 8-372 instead of 8-373. That has been corrected. And then under prohibited acts, section 8-417, letter I. The ordinance currently reads to sell or, under prohibited acts, to sell or give cannabis flower, cannabis products, lower potency hemp edibles, or hemp-derived consumer products by any other means to any other person or any other or in any other manner or form prohibited by federal, state, or local law, ordinance, or other regulation. We are proposing to remove the federal out of that section of the ordinance. And then I believe all the other questions were answered by Attorney Scott. The question that was brought up by Administrator Valiant through Councilmember Butterfield, we talked about the number of licenses issued in the city. If the city was to go into it, would not count towards that maximum number. A specific question on products being sent through the mail, that is not something that the city regulates or enforces. So we wouldn't have any action to take on that specific question. But it's not a regulated or enforceable response from the city on product going through the mail. So if there aren't, I'll pause there, Mr. Mayor, but if there aren't any questions with those amendments that we have made to the ordinance, we would recommend, if the council so chooses, that would be the recommended action to adopt the ordinance with those amendments, unless there's any other questions from the council or comments from the public. I'll pause there, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody from the public wants to speak? I'll bring it up to the council. Councilmember Steve.
Kyle, can you go back through 8-372 on the license issue? I thought I heard you say that if they have a medical marijuana license already, that's gonna be, that license is additional to the 2 that the city's gonna do, so we could potentially have more than 2 firms selling recreational marijuana?
Correct. So, thank you, Councilmember Gardner. Correct, medical cannabis does not count towards the cannabis retail licenses. So if there's a medical dispensary, that would be, again, in addition to the retail businesses that would be issued by the city. So Willmar does have a medical dispensary in town. If they so chose to have a retail license through the state of Minnesota, to have a medical combination business, that would not go towards that minimum number, or that maximum number of 2.
Anybody else? Well, if not, we go back, close the hearing, and bring it to the council as a motion to approve the regulation ordinance with the changes noted.
I will make that motion to accept the ordinance with the amendments as noted.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We got a second. Discussion. Tom?
Mayor, I'm curious, or Kyle, is there a deadline and when do we need to have this ordinance put in place?
That's a great question. We would like to have an ordinance in place sooner rather than later. We do know that the state of Minnesota Office of Cannabis Management, from what we have been told, or what has been published, they do not intend to start issuing retail licenses until May or June of this year. That deadline is, I believe, is still fluid. But we would like to have an ordinance on record at this point. There is public comment period still open with OCM on their rules and regulations that they had updated at the beginning of the year. Depending how the legislature goes this year, if there's any other administrative changes that need to be made, I feel confident saying we'll likely have an amended ordinance coming back to the city council at some point to address any of those changes made at the state level. But to answer your question, no, there isn't necessarily a deadline. However, it is important for the city to have an ordinance on file or on record so we can administer what we can locally or enforce what we can locally.
Anybody else? Yes.
Just before the council votes, I thought it would be helpful, maybe as a reminder for the council, just the kind of broader context that this ordinance is coming to you in. Obviously, as you're all aware, the state legislature legalized cannabis businesses as part of its statute that legalized the businesses. It included a local registration component for retail businesses only, with some authority that was specifically spelled out in the statute for local regulations, and some areas that are more silent or implied that cities must have this authority in order to make a local registration ordinance work. And what I guess characterize this ordinance as is it's about as restrictive as the state would allow localities to be, and that the city is restricting the number of businesses to the smallest number it legally could, which is 2. It imposes, I believe, the maximum buffer requirement it can from the protected uses. It does not allow local cannabis events on public property. Essentially, every place the statute allowed the city to regulate these uses, or even some areas where it was kind of silent on that, but it was implied that the city must be able to do this. This ordinance is exercising that authority and regulating these businesses, again, about as restrictively as could be allowed. So I did want the council to know that before the council takes a vote on this.
Thank you, Robert. You ready to vote? Roll call.
Councilmember Gilbertson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Baggerly.
Aye.
Davis. Aye. Schultes.
Aye.
Oss.
Aye.
And Nelson.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
That motion passes. Now we need a motion to approve the publication by summary.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Gardner.
Aye.
Baggerly.
Aye.
Davis. Aye. Schultes.
Aye.
Oss.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
And Gilbertson.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
That passes. Next is consideration of an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance. Call on you, Tyler, once again.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. So following up on the cannabis retail registration ordinance, we do have an ordinance that would amend the zoning ordinance to include those types of licensed businesses to be allowed or zoned properly within the city of Willmar. So in the council packet, you'll see the, again, in the section 3-5, the cannabis and hemp, that again reiterates the buffer zones, as well as defines each of the types of cannabis businesses that could be may be licensed by the state of Minnesota, which include cannabis micro businesses, meso businesses, cultivators, manufacturers, retailers, wholesalers, transporters, testing facilities, delivery businesses, low-potency hemp edible manufacturers, and low-potency hemp edible retailers. Throughout the zoning ordinance, we do have identified the permitted uses or the permitted areas in the city of Willmar for those businesses to be, to set up or to operate, as well as talking, as I mentioned in the previous ordinance, there is a map attached to the last page of the ordinance in the council packet that identifies the retail zoning districts. Again, that would be Central Business District, and then General Business District 1, 2, and 3. Mr. Mayor, I'll pause there for any questions, or for the public hearing.
Is this a hearing?
Yes.
It is, okay, so I'll open the hearing and ask for public comment. Okay. If not, I'm gonna ask, Christopher, did you have anything you wanted to add to this?
No, there's nothing that, Director Box and I, we worked together on drafting the ordinance, and this aligned with state guidance as well.
Okay. Anybody wants to speak? If not, I'll close the hearing, bring it up to the council for discussion or action. We have a motion.
I can make a motion to adopt the ordinance amending ordinance number 1060.
Okay,
Second.
moved and seconded. Discussion? If no discussion, roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Schultes.
Aye.
Oss.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Gilbertson.
Aye.
And Gardner. 7 ayes, 0 noes.
All right. I need a motion to publish the ordinance by summary also.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second, discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Schultes.
Aye.
Oss.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Gilbertson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
And Fagerly.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
That motion passes. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, council.
Christopher, for your work. Next is to consider the hiring of Alyssa Gambrill as our Human Resource Director.
Good evening,
Leslie?
council. Yes, I'd like to introduce you to Alyssa Gambrill. We have gone through the process of selecting Alyssa out of 15 applicants, and we interviewed 6. And Alyssa comes from the private sector, and I will ask her to come up here, and you could ask her any questions if you'd like.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We met a little earlier today.
You did, yes.
And I know you got a family, and maybe you want to tell the council a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm married. I have 2 kids, a 10th grade boy and a 6th grade boy. We live near Dassel. So my kids go to Dassel Cokato, play basketball and baseball. So that's where all my time goes right now. I have a degree in psychology. I have been working as an HR director in the mental health industry. Specifically, we work with children with autism. So I currently, in my current role, the one I'm about to leave, I work with our staff in Minnesota, Nebraska, California, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. Used to a wide range of employees, different state laws, so kind of a wide variety of experience in that role.
Council, do you have any questions that you want to ask Alyssa? No? Yes.
Just to clarify that you will be working in the city?
Yes.
You won't- Not remotely?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. You will see me. You can come by my office.
Well, welcome. I'll Thank you, Leslie, for your work on this. And I hope you enjoy working for the city of Willmar.
Thank you, I'm very excited to start.
All right, I need a motion to approve the hiring of Alyssa.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Schultes,
Aye.
Osk,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Gilbertson,
Aye.
Gardner,
Aye.
Fagerly,
Aye.
and Davis.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
That motion passes. You're in.
We're going back now.
All right, next we're going to review the city council open forum policy. So it's going to be an open discussion. So if you want to speak, just let me know what you're thinking. We made the motion to review it, the policy itself. Yes, Justin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to staff for getting this on the agenda so quickly. After I had brought it up at the last meeting, in reviewing the 8 different rules that we have there for the open forum, in my mind, I can justify most of them. I still have a problem with number 5, where comments must be limited to the issues that are not on the agenda for the meeting at which comments will be made, and wanting to make sure that we have the opportunity to hear from our constituents on any matter that would be coming before us that night, recognizing that our staff will speak to us on that too. But I would want to make sure that we would at least offer members of the public the opportunity to speak to their elected officials on the matters at hand that evening. So I'd like to see us amend those rules.
Can I ask you, Robert, what do you think about number 5? Why did we have that restraint in there?
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, my understanding is that was put in place in order to make sure that when an item is coming to council, that you hear it presented in the way staff prepared it first, and not from a member of the public who obviously could have a vested interest in something or may not be characterizing it correctly. While I'm sure the council values public input, I think staff thought that it would be important for council to consider agenda items in the manner staff had prepared them. With that said, obviously, this is not a legal issue. This is a policy issue for the city council. All of these rules are, the framework for this is there's no requirement that city councils open up a portion of their regular meetings to public comment. Those that do try to, I think generally try to have some parameters for that discussion so that the public comment portion of the meeting doesn't either get out of hand or take too much time or become too contentious. And I think, honestly, I think the parameters that the city has put in place have worked as intended generally. So the thing with this is if the council has parameters, they have to be content neutral. You can certainly say certain classifications of topics are okay, certain aren't, but then it's incumbent on the city to apply those fairly to everybody, regardless of the particular viewpoint expressed. And again, I don't think that's really been an issue for the city. So that's the background, I think, on the rules that have been in place generally. And my understanding on number 5, again, was just to kind of control those items, make sure council hears them as, presented by staff who had worked on those items. But certainly I'd defer to the city administrator if there's any other thoughts about that.
I would say in that regard is that the public doesn't have the understanding of what the issue is until staff presents it. And so there can be perceived ideas and such and that before the whole presentation is provided. So I would say why number 5 was put in place. I mean, I wasn't here either when none of this was put in place, but I would agree that I would like to see staff being able to present their concerns and go through the process first.
I was there when I was put in, and I wasn't really at first in favor of the open forum. But I think what we've put together is fair, and as our city attorney said, and so did our city administrator, all the years that I've been on the council and now as mayor, I rely on information from staff, because they have the time, they have the direction, they have the access to opinions and have discussions. I appreciate that, and I think that relates to number 5. I'm able to get the clear sense of what it means to make a decision from staff, and then I can make my decision as a council member. So I would be in favor of keeping it as is. Of course, I don't have a vote, but I said. Anybody else? I could tell you were going to, Audrey.
Thank you, I'm glad you could tell. So, thank you, Mayor Reese. This was updated in August of 2021, and I think that's when we went to some of these. And I don't remember us actually having a conversation, more just changing it with that. So I had a couple questions. I am uncomfortable with number 5 in that I think back when we used to have committees or those types of things, it was usually, by the time it got to the council table, it already had been discussed by someone, whether it was the planning commission or whether it was committees. That doesn't happen this time. And so while certainly staff presenting information, I think sometimes there are some things that the public can bring to the table. And with that, I don't have any issue with someone calling and asking me to bring that to the table. That's fine. But I'm a little concerned about feeling a little slam dunk kind of, we're not open to hearing what the public has to say. I also was questioning the time frame in number 4. It says that only 3 people can speak about the same topic in open forum. However, then it says that there 3 people are allotted to 5 minutes, where individuals can speak for 3 minutes. So there's like the second and third people, time-wise, I question that one also with that. So the other thing that I think is we sit here and we listen and we don't, which is fine. We shouldn't comment because staff do need to follow up with them. But there's a lot of times we don't hear back so a person can come to the table and ask a question and it'll be referred to staff, but council never gets an answer with what was the answer that was given to the person who came to the public forum regarding this subject. And I think that's important for us to understand too with that. And so I would ask that we would have a report back to council on the questions that are asked at the public forum. You know, it says, and that the issue will come back to the council on an agenda item in the future. I don't know that happens either. If it's resolved or if it's just a complaint, you know, kind of thing. But I do struggle with that one, you know, with that. I also know, I remember there's a lot of cities who don't have a public forum. There are cities who have the public forum at the end of the meeting. So not to disrupt, but it still gives people an opportunity to speak. I like where ours is at. But I do really question that, you know, the items on the agenda, because there's a lot of times we don't get information with what's on the agenda until Friday afternoon. And when we do our homework, now you're looking at Monday. And so if someone's looking for something, or a lot of times they don't know about it until after we voted on it, and then they have questions. So I guess I am a fan of being open and transparent with the community also, and that's our responsibility as elected officials, so.
Vicky?
I was just gonna say that I think since the mayor runs the meetings, I would respect his ideas on it personally.
Yeah, from a civic engagement, I think that's lacking in today's society. So anytime that we can get feedback from our constituents, it's going to be better. Now, obviously, if they come to us with information before the meeting and express that in a phone call or email, it'll be listened to and pondered upon for a longer period of time versus knee-jerk reactions at the council meeting, which may not be very helpful. So I'd encourage the folks of Willmar to reach out to us via phone call or email or stop on into City Hall where we will be able to truly listen. But also, I would love for us to strike Section 5 so that we can hear from them at any point in time.
Audrey?
Thank you, Mayor Reese. If we leave it there, and I respect that, but then I think we also have to make sure that we don't allow because sometimes you will allow people to speak when we're discussing. If someone, it's like, well, do you have anything to add to that? That's not appropriate if we're not gonna allow them to do it at open forum either. Then we have to say, no, you cannot speak to this, it's at the council table. And so that to me is, you can't just pick and choose who you decide, who's sitting out in the audience should be allowed to speak.
Yes.
Do we have any evidence that it's preventing people from speaking? Or is it, I'm new to this, I don't know how many people normally come to these open forums. I've been here for exactly 3 and seen exactly 0 people. So I'm not sure what the scope of the issue is, but if there's this if people think that they can't speak and they can only speak to what's not on the agenda, well, then maybe we have a communications issue. People either don't understand what the purpose of the open forum is, because I assume anytime we have a public hearing, they have the opportunity to speak, right? But not everything that we do has a public hearing associated with it. So that's really not what we're talking about here. It's if they want to come and say there's too many cats running around the street, I want a chance to talk about it. If we're talking about pet ordinances, they should be able to come and talk about that, right? Is that kind of what you're saying, Justin?
What do you want to do about it, Justin?
I just want to say that I definitely respect the work that our staff puts into everything that they bring to the table. And I do believe that they still set the table for all of us when they present issues for us. The work that we receive that they do in our council action reports, that we're reading before these meetings give us a sense of what it is, the issue at hand. If we leave 5 in my opinion, it just makes it that the public can't comment on it that night. Staff's still going to be able to speak to us. They're going to get the final word, which I think is more important than the first word. But it still allows the public to speak to their elected officials. And I mean, it's certainly possible that you have uninformed members of the public that don't understand the full scope of the issue. And I think you can trust the council members to know the difference between someone that might not understand the full scope, especially after they've heard from the staff who's maybe had to correct. I mean, this happens in public forums all the time where staff have to say like, no, that's actually not true. We've done whatever. But encouraging more communication with the citizens of Willmar seems healthy. And so I will make a motion to strike number 5 from open forum rules.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Discussion. Vicky?
Thinking about this more, I think if someone does ask a question, and they're wrong, if they have the wrong information and they're coming for the forum, that's a good chance to tell the truth about the matter. So actually, we should keep.
Did we have a motion? You made a motion, Tom seconded.
Discussion.
Any more discussion on it? Audrey?
Just a clarification of Vicky, I'm not understanding which way you're thinking.
Well, I mean, I want to honor the mayor, but I'm thinking if someone stands up and they have questions that are totally, like they're misunderstanding the topic, what a great time for staff to tell them the truth about the matter and for all of us to hear it too. Does that make sense?
I can be wrong.
But that's an interactive time at that, you're saying when we discuss it later.
No, I'm saying when they speak at the forum about the topic, then when staff comes later.
That's what I meant. It's not at the time they're standing
Right,
there.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Any more discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Osk,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Gilbertson,
Aye.
Gardner,
Aye.
Baggerly, Davis. Aye. And Schultes.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
That passes. Do we have any more discussion or concerns with the open forum policy? Audrey?
Just a clarification, I think we could ask staff that if someone agrees to get back to the person that's at the public forum, that we be informed with what they were told. That we don't come back the next meeting and wonder whatever happened, kind of thing. I think that would be important for that communication to take place, whether that's in an email or just some sort of way of letting us know with what that person, because that person may have interacted with one of us in the meantime, and it's nice to know that communication.
You didn't think of putting any time limitation on it, because I think sometimes what the issue is being discussed, the staff has to.
Yeah, no, I think,
It might take them a week, 3 weeks.
or a year.
Yeah.
I'm aware of that, but I think just to know that we're working on it kind of thing is fine.
Will that work, City Administrator Leslie?
We'll make it work.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other changes or discussion? Audrey?
I had asked also about the community pride. I know it wasn't listed on there, and I don't care whether we talk about it tonight or not, but I do think that there are sometimes just announcements or statements or requests or things that maybe could feel a little more open than just having to be a community pride.
I don't know what the original intent was.
To my understanding, there is no written
Policy.
form like this on the community pride announcements. We couldn't find anything.
Will we just make it announcements?
Yeah.
And
So if you would like to put something like this down, we can do that.
Tom?
You call it council open forum.
council comments, council.
Are you okay with the process?
Yeah, I just know when it was put in there, we were told we were supposed to notify people what that was going to be. That you couldn't just speak, you had to kind of let people know what you were going to say. And I think that if there's something going on next week, or there's something that people want to say, I think it removes that ability to do that. So.
I would think it's a pretty open and I don't wanna complicate it. So if it's okay, you just continue as is.
I'd appreciate removing community pride and just having announcements.
Community announcements.
Yeah, or just announcements. Anybody, staff or anybody has anything they want us to know, or council members.
That's okay. Council okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. So the next thing is 10C, and that's the broadband committee, and replacing Mike O'Brien. I've talked to Justin about serving in that capacity. We need a motion to do that, if you're okay with
I'll
it.
make that motion to appoint Justin Ask to the Open Fiber Committee to place of Mike O'Brien.
Second.
Here, we've got a motion and a second discussion. Nobody's got anything bad to say.
Don't want to do that.
Roll call.
Councilmember Nelson.
Aye.
Gilbertson.
Aye.
Gardner.
Aye.
Baggerly.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Schultes.
Aye.
And Osk.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 noes.
Motion passes. Next is announcements. I've got that. Any announcements? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.